Do you know what wet food actually does to your cat when they eat it every single day? Not just in the bowl, not just in the moment they're eating, but inside their body, in their organs, in their digestion, in the way they carry weight, grow their coat, and behave around you. Most owners think wet food is just a treat, something you pull out when your cat is being picky or when you want to spoil them a little. A reward, not a routine. But that assumption might be costing your cat more than you realize. Because the truth is, when you start feeding wet food daily, consistently, correctly, something begins to shift, and it happens faster than most people expect. Within days, certain things start changing internally. Within weeks, you'll start seeing it with your own eyes, and some of what changes might genuinely surprise you. We're going to go through everything: the science, the biology, the stuff most pet food companies would rather you didn't think too hard about. And at the end, I'm going to tell you about the one thing that can make all of this backfire, quietly, invisibly, if you're not paying attention to it. Let's start at the beginning. 1. Their body finally closes a gap that's been open their entire life. To understand what wet food does for your cat's hydration, you have to go back further than the cat. You have to go back to the wild cat. Wild cats, the direct ancestors of every breed alive today, from the Maine Coon to the Siamese, didn't drink from ceramic bowls in a kitchen. They hunted, and what they hunted was alive. A freshly caught mouse, a bird, a small rodent. Fresh prey is roughly 70% water. That means every single meal was simultaneously a hydration event. The food and the water arrived together, the way they were always supposed to. Your cat's body evolved around that reality over hundreds of thousands of years. Their kidneys, their bladder, their entire urinary system, all of it calibrated for a diet that delivered moisture continuously, with every meal, multiple times a day. Drinking from a separate water source was something that happened occasionally, not something the body depended on to survive. Now, fast forward to today. The average bag of dry kibble contains somewhere between 8 and 12% moisture. Let's call it 10. Fresh prey is 70. That's a 60% gap between what your cat's biology was built for and what most cats actually eat every single day of their lives. And here's the part that matters. Their body doesn't just accept that gap and move on. It fights it. Every single day, their kidneys are working harder than they should to filter waste that arrives far more concentrated than it was ever meant to. Their urine becomes dense. Their urinary tract is under constant low-level stress. And most of the time, despite drinking from their water bowl, they're still running slightly behind on hydration. Because drinking water and eating water are not the same thing to a cat's physiology. The absorption pathways are different, the efficiency is different, the body handles them differently. This is why urinary problems are so extraordinarily common in cats. Crystals, bladder stones, infections, blockages. These aren't random. They're predictable outcomes of a chronic hydration gap that most owners don't even know exists. When you switch to wet food, which sits between 75 and 80% moisture, that gap closes. Their urine becomes more diluted. Their kidneys don't have to work overtime anymore. The risk of crystal formation drops significantly because the urine is no longer concentrated enough to allow minerals to precipitate and clump together. Your cat will still drink from their bowl, but their body finally stops playing catch-up. The organs that were always working in a mild state of deficit get to operate the way they were designed to. And that change, that single fundamental shift, is what makes everything else on this list possible. 2. You'll see the difference in the litter box before you see it anywhere else. Here's one that surprises people. If you want one of the clearest, most immediate, most honest signals that your cat's digestion has genuinely improved, look at what they leave behind in the litter box. Cats on dry kibble often produce stools that are inconsistent in texture and size. Sometimes too dry, sometimes unusually strong-smelling. Sometimes they strain, and most owners just accept this as normal because they've never seen anything different. But it's not normal. It's a sign that the digestive system is working extremely hard to extract usable nutrition from food that is heavily processed and often low in genuinely bioavailable protein. When you switch to wet food, what you notice changes. The stools become smaller, more consistent, and easier to pass. That's not a side effect, that's evidence. It means more of what your cat ate is actually being absorbed and used by their body. The higher moisture content also helps support smoother digestion and healthier bowel movement patterns. Cats that have dealt with chronic constipation or inconsistent digestion on dry food often improve within the first few weeks. 3. Their weight shifts without you doing anything differently. This one frustrates a lot of owners. They measure portions carefully, avoid giving too many treats, and still watch the weight slowly creep up. Here's what's happening. Dry kibble is one of the most calorie-dense food formats ever designed for pets. Much of its structure relies on carbohydrates and starches that help create the shape and shelf stability of the food. But cats are obligate carnivores. Their bodies are designed primarily for protein and fat, not heavy carbohydrate intake. When a cat eats carbohydrate-heavy kibble, blood sugar rises quickly, then drops quickly. The brain interprets that drop as hunger, so they return to the bowl sooner, even if they technically consumed enough calories. Wet food changes the equation. It's typically higher in animal protein, lower in carbohydrates, and significantly higher in moisture. That combination creates stronger satiety signals and slows the hunger cycle. The result is often a cat that eats, feels satisfied, and calmly walks away instead of constantly searching for more food. 4. Their coat tells the truth before you even realize you're looking. There's a reason some cats seem unbelievably soft and glossy, while others feel dry, flaky, or rough no matter how much grooming or supplementation you try. Your cat's skin and coat are biological systems that rely heavily on high-quality animal proteins and essential fatty acids. Dry kibble undergoes intense heat processing during manufacturing, and that process can reduce the quality and availability of certain nutrients. Wet food tends to preserve more moisture and more bioavailable proteins and fats. Over time, many owners notice their cat's coat becoming softer, shinier, and less brittle after switching to wet food daily. Excessive shedding may decrease. Dry skin may improve. It doesn't happen instantly, but once the body starts receiving nutrients in a form it can use more effectively, the coat often becomes one of the first visible signs. 5. Their behavior around food changes in ways most owners don't expect. Does your cat scream for food at 5 a.m., follow you into the kitchen constantly, act desperate the second they hear a can open? A lot of owners think that's just personality, but part of it is biology. Dry food often creates short-lived fullness. The blood sugar spike and crash cycle can leave cats feeling hungry again surprisingly quickly. Wet food changes that cycle. The higher protein content creates a more stable feeling of fullness. The moisture adds physical volume, and the lower carbohydrate load helps stabilize energy levels. Slowly, many cats become calmer around meals, less frantic, less obsessive, less desperate for constant snacks. Some cats who eat too quickly or display food anxiety may still benefit from puzzle feeders or slower feeding routines, especially if those habits developed from competition or insecurity earlier in life. But for many cats, simply switching the food itself changes the emotional intensity around mealtime. 6. The one risk most owners never think about. If wet food offers so many benefits, why doesn't every cat eat it every day? Part of the answer is convenience. Dry kibble is easier to store, cheaper to ship, and can sit in a bowl much longer. Wet food is different. The moment wet food reaches room temperature, bacteria begin multiplying rapidly. Harmful pathogens can become dangerous within just a couple of hours, depending on the environment. And this matters especially for cats because many cats are grazers. They take a few bites, walk away, and come back later. That second or third visit may no longer be safe. The rule is simple: never leave wet food sitting out for more than 1 to 2 hours. If your cat doesn't finish it, remove it. Unused portions should be covered and refrigerated immediately, and ideally used within 48 hours. There's another thing many owners miss. Serving wet food cold straight from the refrigerator often makes it less appealing to cats because cold temperatures reduce the smell. And for cats, smell is everything. A few seconds of gentle warming or a little warm water mixed into the food can dramatically increase aroma and make the meal much more attractive. None of this is a reason to avoid wet food. The hydration, digestion, weight support, coat improvement, and behavioral changes are all real. But the difference between wet food helping your cat thrive and wet food quietly causing problems often comes down to how you handle it after opening the can. Get that part right, and you're giving your cat something their body has instinctively been designed for since the days their ancestors hunted fresh prey in the wild.